And that is that you don't realize how important your health is until you don't have it anymore. I started to discover that it was a lifestyle decision, not a diet.
My outcome is not to walk around with 6-pack abs. I got 4 of them, but it's not 6.
And now I'm in mid-40s, and I'm going to tell you right now, I don't feel like I'm mid-40s. I feel like I felt like I was 21 still.
Welcome to the family office. Planning for the people who matter most.
So, but I think part of what we talked about before, on this show, we're going to be talking about health, and we're going to be talking about biohacking. We're going to be talking about longevity and really being able to put yourself in a position, because at the end of the day, there's an old cliche that says your health is your wealth, right? So For me, the whole idea is that if you eat well and you exercise and you put good stuff into your body and you move your body, you're going to live longer and you're going to be healthier. And so for those of you I'll be coming from the home care health space, and Chris will be coming more from the financial space. And then our interaction will be a lot from the taking care of yourself and just the merging of those two. So my perspective is this. My hope is that your parents won't need our services for a long time because you're getting enough information to be able to take care of yourself from a health perspective. And so, for me, one of the things that I realized is when I turned 50 years old, man, I was 20 pounds overweight. And I started to have a gut, and I started to have low levels of energy, and I wasn't happy about turning 50. A lot of people look at that as a milestone. It wasn't a milestone for me. And so that's when I really started to say, you know what? Right now, you've got to change your lifestyle. You need to change your habits. You need to change the way that you feed your temple, because you probably have fewer years in front of you than you have behind you. So do something about it. And so I'm looking forward to jumping into that as well, because I've learned a lot about just health and eating and all that stuff. So I'm looking forward to that too.
Yeah, and just sharing those topics and those tidbits and just different things. It's kind of almost like just a transparency into our lives and how we did that, and how, again, not telling anybody what to do or any of that. I think there's just, the internet is rife with that. It's full of that, but just like, hey, here's who I am, here's who he is, here's who we are, and here's what we did, and here's what worked for us. Because it's kind of almost like, hey, just show me how you did this, right? Like, because you can hear all that. Oh, this is, this is how you're successful, and this is how we made it, and this is how we drive this kind of car and live in this neighborhood and all this stuff. Great. Could you just tell me what you actually did? Yes, this is exactly what we did. So today we have 6 topics that we're going to try to talk about. And in no certain order, we're going to talk about aging parents and the sandwich generation, what that means. We're going to talk about health today, your body versus, your summer body, and then lifestyle changes. We're going to talk about financial resets, right? And the second half of this year, what that looks like for you, what you ought to be doing. If you're like anything like me and like Len, you're like, okay, first half of the year's over. What have you accomplished financially? What are you planning on wanting to accomplish? What can you do? What's your reset look like going in out of summer? Summer and family, and what that relates to and how that looks. Zoran Mamdani, am I saying that wrong?
Mamdani,
winning a Democratic primary, first openly Democratic socialist from, I think he's from Uganda, studied African studies. We're going to talk about that and what that means. And then lastly, the Epstein files and why is this such a big deal. And there's a lot of that stuff going on over the weekend. I think, and we'll talk into that. But I think since we're talking about biohacking and health and what that looked like, I think it's a good segue. We could just kind of go into that right now. And kind of maybe we'll just talk about health and summer body versus, lifestyle changes. And really what that looks like, simply because you said your health is your wealth. And we like to talk about a lot of different things, Len. And
driven by vanity, so I would have, so in life, you have the thermostat and you have the thermos, right? And for me, my setting is 200 pounds. So at the point before I turned 50,
200 pounds, that's your.
So that's my, okay, if I hit 200 pounds, that means that I need to bring it back, dial it back, go on a diet and get healthier so I can look better. So what would happen is I was on this constant yo-yo. So I would get up to 200 pounds. I'd go back down to about 190, 187. And then I'd say, you know what? Everything's great, and go back to my old eating habits. And then I'd creep up, and what I would do is on the way down, I was always looking at my weight, always seeing how much I weighed. But what I didn't do is on the way back up, I never looked at it, because in my mind, like right after I started, I would eat a meal and then take a look at the scale and then say, oh, it hasn't moved that much. And then after that, I stopped looking at the scale. And then, all of a sudden, a month goes by, 2 months goes by, but I'm looking at myself every day. So I don't see day by day changes. But then by typically around month 5 or 6, I'm back up to my weight. And then I go back on the diet again. And one time I would try one diet method, and another time I try another one. But what happened for me is the real changes when I turned 50. And so, I'll tell you about that whole story. But what was it like for you? Was it like a back and forth type of thing? Or was it when you had your awakening back, when you were 36? Was it like, have you been pretty consistent ever since then? What's been your journey?
Well, I mean, it's interesting. The thing and that's the reason why a lot of diets don't fail, right? And that's kind of really what I want to talk about, summer body.
Yeah, all diets work, right?
Oh, they all work.
Yeah, they all work. You just have to be consistent with it, but go ahead.
Yeah, and then I think that's the dichotomy. That's the thing here, is talking about the summer body mindset versus the lifestyle change. And it's interesting you say vanity, because for me, it originally was for vanity. I got out of high school and I was not happy with the way I looked, and I was like, I want to date girls, and I want to date beautiful girls. And I want to date beautiful women, and I want to go crazy, and I'm 21 and I can drink now, and all of these great things. So for me, it was vanity. So I started doing cardio kickboxing, and for me, what worked was I found a little thing. I was cleaning out something in my house, and I found this little book that my mom had. It was called the Air Force Diet. And essentially what the Air Force diet was a low carb diet. And then from there, I was like, well, that's not around anymore, because it's not 1960 or 1950 anymore. So I discovered the Atkins diet, and I started doing low carb diet, and I started exercising, doing cardio kickboxing. But because, most guys are lazy, and I was still lazy, I was looking for the quick fix. I was like, I just started doing low carb. And for me, that was very easy. And I would do some exercise. I would run. I was a runner. I enjoyed running. But for me, low carb, it was for vanity reasons. And I lost a ton of weight, and I got in really good shape, and I was like, okay, this is great. And I followed that for some time. But of course, as you start to get girlfriends, you start to get lazy again, right? So all those things. Yeah. And that's the difference, again, between the summer body thing and I'm doing it for a fleeting reason. Vanity is a fleeting reason, right? That's what I discovered anyways. And I would gain the weight. And then I go through a breakup, and then I get in shape again, and then you get it, find a girl again, and then you gain the weight. And that's really where I started to mature in the process, where I started to discover that it was a lifestyle decision, not a diet. But for me, I still do low carb. Still to this day, I do low carb. For my diet plan of choice, or my protocol now, is what I really like to label as for myself internally, is Mediterranean paleo, and that's what I stick to. But I always trend towards low carb, and that's really what it is, finding what works for your body. For me, that's what works.
Oh, that's cool. I like that, because, like you said in the beginning, every diet does work. And I think it's just a matter of finding the one that works for you long term. And so what happened for me is when I turned 50, I said, okay, I'm done with this up and down yo-yo thing. I'm tired of going through the beginning agony of starting that diet, because starting is the hardest, because you have these ideas of grandeur that, you're going to get the 6-pack abs and everything's going to be great, and it's going to be a piece of cake. Because truth be told, for guys, losing weight's not that hard, but it's the keeping it off part that's the difficult part. So for me, what happened is once I turned 50, that's when I really introduced walking into my daily routine. And so now on a low day, I'm typically walking about 10,000 steps. My goal is to hit about 20,000 steps a day. And so I know before you say, okay, how in the world did you do that? Do you do that and maintain it consistently? Is for me, when I take my walks, that's when I'm making my phone calls. That's when I'm sending my emails. That's when I'm doing some ideation for different ideas from a home care agency and creating content. And, so I may be, taking a look and I'm calling my mom. I'm reaching out to my dad. I'm talking to people that I care about and maintaining those relationships. So by the time I get up typically around 4:30, I'm out of the house either by 5 or 5:30. So by doing 20,000 steps, I can be done by 8 o'clock and I can start my day. So it is really it starts the night before for me. So I'm typically in bed somewhere between 9:30 and 10. If I've got extra work to do, of course, I'm going to be up till 10:30 or 11, but that's not a habit. That's not something that I do regularly. That's the exception. So by getting a good night's sleep, because sleep is where your body does the most recovery, your cells are recovering and rejuvenating and things like that. So I don't set my alarm clock. I wake up when my body tells me to wake up. And so once I wake up, I get up, I get my 20,000 steps in, and I get started with my day. Now, as it relates to eating, I don't do paleo. I'm mostly a low carb, mostly like a ketogenic type of a diet. And so I settled on that because I like the idea of being able to eat whole foods. But I'm not going to lie. I love my sweets and I love my breads and all of that stuff. But I understand that I just can't eat it all the time. So what I did is when I turned 50, I introduced walking and then I introduced keto and I stayed pure to it until I hit my target weight. And then what I had to do was figure out what can I do as a regimen to keep the weight off. So what I do is I do a low carb keto diet, but on Sundays and Wednesdays, those are my cheat days. So those are the days where I eat my sweets. Those are the days that I eat my bread. And so as long as I'm doing keto 5 out of the 7 days for my body type, I've found that allows me to stay at the weight. Now, my outcome is not to walk around with 6-pack abs. I got 4 of them, but it's not 6. And so, but I just want to look good in my clothes. I don't want to have man boobs, I don't want to have breasts, I just want to feel good when I put my pants on. I don't have a belt, that's got a gut that's covering my buckle, and that works for me. And so I know that based on my eating habits, if I wanted to bulk up, I'd go more heavy on the proteins and get into a weightlifting regimen. I don't like that though. I've gone to the gym and I've done that for a while, but it was something for me where it wasn't something I enjoyed. And because I didn't enjoy it, it wasn't sustainable. So my last thing that I'll say is that do what you enjoy and also be willing to do what you don't enjoy for periods of time so you can live the life that you want to live.
And I think the biggest thing that I'm hearing when I'm listening to you now is really just finding what works for you, right? Experimenting, tinkering, and finding what works for you. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, it's got to be a very concrete, very, very solid reason why. I mean, outside of the obvious reasons of, look, if you have self-worth, right, and you respect yourself and you care about how you look and how you feel, you're gonna take care of yourself, right? If you don't, you're not. You're just not. And that's really the thing. For me, it's like how do you stay a high value man, right? How do you stay a high value man? And in 2017, after looking at what I was doing and looking at myself in the mirror, I really just looked at it and I thought about my kids first, and I was just like, I need to be a good example to my kids. I have to be that example to them. I don't want them to look at me and go, and especially at that point, they were starting to get at that point where they're going to be older than 5 and 6. So now all of a sudden kids start to have an opinion and they start to know things and they start to become aware. I'm like, I don't want to be the dad that's like the overweight, out of shape, crotchety dad. I just didn't want to be that for my kids. I just didn't want to. So I got really freaked out in 2017, and that's when I started working out very heavily again and doing those things. But for me, it wasn't until, again, where the why became even more stronger for me. Obviously, my kids.
What was the why? So your kids was one.
Oh, 100%.
Was that your main driver? Because one of the things that you also mentioned was being a high value man. So that's something I want to dig into a little bit too. But
I mean, because at first I was getting in shape for summertime. I was getting in shape to get a girl, right? I was getting in shape for this. Then it was like, okay, well, I already got married. I got my wife. My wife loves me, right? And obviously we're attracted to each other. We just keep having kids. We can't stop having kids, right? So
7,
that's fine.
Bro. Yeah.
That's fine, right? I mean,
that's
fine, right?
That's working.
And I'm not Mormon, right? And that's kind of that goes right. Some people ask me that, but it started to get more about non-superficial stuff, right? And it started to become a lifestyle for me because I was like, I want to be able to run with them. I want to be able to work out with them. I want to be able to do sports activities with them, Len. I don't want to be left on the field. Oh, Dad can't hang out. I don't want to be, that's just what old people do. Dad is out of shape, right? I didn't want to be in that. And then at the same time, I was looking at it from my wife's standpoint and going, my wife doesn't want to see some out of shape guy hop out of the shower. She don't want to see some guy like breathing hard because you can't like get up the stairs or anything like that. You're like, she don't want to look at none of that stuff, right? None of that. So I was like, you better get your butt in shape. So part of that is as you start to read self-development books and you start to read business books and you start to correlate this and you go, and that's kind of what's important to me is like, you can't be high functioning in business or in any area or in any areas of your life. You can't be high functioning. And then all of a sudden your body looks terrible. You're out of shape and health wise. Because how can you be high performance? And I'm like, how can I be of high value to my wife if I look like crap? And I can't get up. And then I also looked at it and went, well, wait a minute. I'm providing value to my family, right? And to everyone else I look at or everyone else around me in my life. How can I go out and work 16 hours a day, 12 hours a day and provide value for myself or my family if I'm not in shape because I can't perform anymore? And that's really where it became a big wake-up call for me. And it started to go from just, a summer body mindset or because I got to do this to more of a what you do in your 20s tells you how you're going to feel in your 30s, what you do in your 30s to your 40s. You know what I mean, Len? And I was like, if I don't start doing this in my mid-30s, late mid-30s, 36, if I don't really start getting serious about this, by the time I get to mid-40s, I'm going to feel it. And now I'm in mid-40s, and I'm going to tell you right now, I don't feel like I'm mid-40s. I feel like I felt like I was 21 still. The way I feel when I was 21 is the way I still feel like today. And that is because I decided to not do it to get the girl, right? But do it because it really was a mindset change. That's where I think that's where you develop the discipline.
That's good. That's really good because you're much of a quick learner than I am. And so for me, it was, I always knew, because we had, mentors that talked to us about being high performing and things like that. So I never allowed myself to get like super out of shape. Like even though 200 pounds was my weight limit, it didn't impact my day-to-day performance. Except for the fact that looking back, I would definitely say I have more energy now. So I probably just didn't realize it because I was in it and carrying all that extra weight around. But now that I look back, I definitely have more energy now at 53 than I did when I was in my 40s for sure. I would say for me, the reason why for me to really maintain the weight was more of vitality. Like I don't necessarily care because I have a 102-year-old grandmother and she still walks and she still talks and she's in her right mind. She'll say some funny things because she's hilarious, but she has a sharp mind. And I don't necessarily care if I live to 102. What I care about is being able to walk, being able to have a sharp mind, being able to feel good on a regular basis. I'd much rather die younger but I feel good every day as opposed to living longer. And so I figured, you know what? Most people die because of heart attacks, and most people's heart attacks are because of stress and how they put stuff into their bodies. And if they're putting all these red meats into their bodies every day, and they're putting this food that's high in carcinogens, and they're putting all of these oxidating types of food into their body, like refined foods and, you know, overly processed foods and high sugar content food all the time, you may not feel it when you eat it one time or two times or five times, but that effect over the course of 20, 30 years makes a big difference. Think about this. I had a colleague when I was
right?
That's it, man. Effect. That's it. That's exactly
Ray
right.
Dalio, I was listening to Ray Dalio a couple days ago, and he's like, once you get to your 40s and your 50s, you'll start to see the compounding effects of your life.
That's right. That's exactly right. And to that point, one of my colleagues, when I was a principal, because remember, I was younger than all of them, and he was in his 50s, and he said, you know, I started putting on about 2 pounds a year at 40, and now I'm 60. That's 40 pounds of extra weight that I just put on gradually. Think about that. 40 pounds.
Like this, you don't even realize it's happening.
It's actually a very slow process, but then you look back and now all of a sudden, you know, 20 years later, you've got 40 extra pounds. That's the insidious effect of it. And so, yeah, it's crazy, but you know, we'll definitely dig more into different specifics of what to do, because, you know, you talked about paleo. I talked about keto. We both talked about the fact that all kind of diet works, but I really want to jump in on some other episodes to really get very butt specific about somebody, because somebody might be out there watching and they've been battling weight their entire lives. And they're like, I don't know what to do. Every single time I try, it just fails. And what do I do? So I definitely want to give some value in another episode to folks that are dealing with that.
And I think it's just so important, you know, as we transition here, to just always, as a man and as a husband, even if you're not a husband, even if you're just a single guy, it's so important to maintain or to have a fitness program, a nutrition program, and a lifestyle program centered around that as one of the pillars in your life. Just because you can't be your best if that area of your life is not controlled. Because again, men need discipline, and that's an area of life where a lot of men do not have discipline in their exercise or their diet, exercise, nutrition plan, and that is going to bleed into other areas of your life. So yeah, we could definitely talk about what worked, specific details. We could just do a whole episode or a whole talk just on that. But definitely, you know, you could see the difference in your later years. You could see the difference now, post-retirement, post-semi, or anything that you want to talk about. You could notice that difference. So,
no doubt.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. And again, the key difference is it not just being something that you're trying out, but it's an actual lifestyle. It's part of your lifestyle. And that's the key thing is, you know, Mediterranean diet is part of my lifestyle. Low carb is part of my lifestyle, as I'm sure you're doing nutrition planning. What you follow, it's part of your lifestyle. It's not just something that you do.
Right. It's not a temporary thing where I hit a target and then I stop and then go back into old habits. All of that had to change. You're absolutely right.
How to make it part of your daily life, and you've incorporated into that. So
absolutely.
I like that.
Absolutely.
We'll see you guys on the next one.
Yep. And all I would say in wrapping up is, if you liked what you heard, share it with somebody. And maybe if you disagreed with something I said or disagreed with something that Chris said, or vice versa, you agreed, we'd also like to hear from you. One thing that we really want to do as we grow is, if you continue to engage with us, we're going to continue to bring content and information. And our number one goal is to bring value to you. And so any way that we can do that, we want to do that. So make sure you like, make sure you comment, make sure you share. And as Chris said, with that, till next time, take care.
conversation has given you clarity on your next steps, please share this episode with someone who's walking the same path. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss future episodes. And remember, planning ahead isn't just prudent, it's an act of care. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time on The Family Office.